I've been around that long and that people remember films that long. It's beautiful. I love movie making.
Rebecca was arguably the most magnetic leading lady of the 1980s. She matched Tom Cruise scene for scene before he became a global superstar. Then she flipped the script, delivering one of the most chilling villain performances of the 1990s. For a brief moment, the studio system thought they found their next massive star. But then, almost silently, she faded. Today, you and I are exploring the rise and sudden fade of Rebecca de Mornay. Born Rebecca Jane Pearch in Santa Rosa, California on August 29, 1959. Her father, Wally George, worked as a local DJ before becoming a Southern California television host, famous for his aggressive, confrontational on-air style. Her parents split in 1960 when she was practically a newborn. Her mother remarried a year later, and Rebecca adopted her new stepfather's last name, de Mornay. That foundation cracked quickly. Richard de Mornay suffered a fatal stroke on March 2, 1962. Rebecca was only 2, leaving her mother to raise her and her half-brother alone. Instead of planting roots in California, her mother made a shocking pivot. She relocated the entire family to Europe. Rebecca spent her childhood bouncing across borders. She ultimately enrolled at the independent Summerhill School in Suffolk, England, a unique academy famous for its progressive, student-driven approach. She eventually finished up her high school education at a private academy in Germany. By 16, she spoke fluent German and French. She even had representation selling her original music to rock bands, and wrote the main theme for a martial arts picture called Goodbye Bruce Lee, His Last Game of Death, 1975. She graduated with top honors from her German high school in 1977. As industry veterans, we could see that when Hollywood finally met Rebecca de Mornay, they were getting a young woman who had already weathered a lifetime of chaos. Her path to the screen began in 1980. At 20 years old, she moved back to America and enrolled at the famous Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute in Los Angeles. The intense method acting program demanded total emotional surrender from its talent, and de Mornay committed to it completely. During her training, she secured an apprenticeship at Francis Ford Coppola's Zoetrope Studios, arguably the most respected independent production house in the entire business back then. Zoetrope gave her that crucial first screen credit. She landed a tiny role in Coppola's highly ambitious 1981 picture, One from the Heart, a stylized musical starring Frederick Forrest and Terry Garr. The picture bombed hard at the box office, losing massive money for Coppola's company, but it finally got her on camera. It also placed her right next to veteran character actor Harry Dean Stanton, and the two quickly sparked a romance on set. Stanton was already a famous, established character actor in his 50s, putting him decades older than the rising young star. Their romance naturally sparked industry gossip, but de Mornay never really cared about playing by traditional Hollywood rules or matching our expectations. That fierce independence was about to pay off big. I have always believed the finest, most raw performances come from truly gifted American screen actors. They just feel more grounded and believable on camera than European talent, though exceptions certainly exist. Which brings us to her major breakthrough in risky business. Stick with me here. In 1982, she auditioned for a picture developed by first-time director Paul Brickman. The picture was Risky Business. It featured an unproven kid named Tom Cruise, playing the lead part of a teenager named Joel Goodson, a rich Chicago high school senior left unsupervised for the weekend, leading to absolute chaos. De Mornay booked the part of Lana, the working girl who walks into Joel's house and flips his reality upside down. She and Cruise started dating during production, a romance that lasted long after wrap. Warner Brothers dropped Risky Business on August 5th, 1983, and it exploded into a massive critical and financial hit. The movie pulled in over $63 million domestically, making it the 10th highest earning picture of 1983 across the United States. Critic Roger Ebert praised it as one of the sharpest, most brilliant satires he had screened in years, boldly comparing it to the classic film The Graduate. The New York Times praised her performance, calling her disarming as a working girl who looked exactly like a normal college student. Cruise scored his first Golden Globe nod for the role. Looking back, de Mornay frequently called Risky Business her true Hollywood Cinderella moment. She connected with that script on a deep level. Having survived alone in London as a teenager, she totally understood that character's constant survival mode. She told the press that she recognized Lana's street smarts right away, claiming the difficult role fit her like an absolute glove. By 24, she had starred in the most buzzed-about movie of the season, acting opposite a kid who was seconds away from becoming the biggest movie star on the entire planet. The cultural impact of that picture was massive. That legendary shot of Cruise sliding across the floor in his socks was permanently burned into the brains of a whole generation. But De Mornay anchored the entire tone of the movie. It felt like much more than a cheap teen comedy purely because her dramatic chops gave it weight. Audiences felt the genuine danger in Lana's world, and De Mornay's raw acting is exactly what communicated those heavy stakes. So, you and I have to ask, what happens next for these stars? This is exactly where their Hollywood paths split apart. She shot 3 films in a year and snagged a Golden Globe nod. 1985 proved just how hungry she was to work. She booked 3 distinct pictures in 12 months, tackling wildly different scripts. First, she starred in The Slugger's Wife, a Neil Simon comedy drama directed by Hal Ashby alongside actor Michael O'Keefe. That picture flopped hard, but it proved she was brave enough to step outside dark thrillers. More importantly, she secured roles in 2 major prestige films that scored Academy Award nominations. The Trip to Bountiful, helmed by Peter Masterson and starring Geraldine Page, was a beautifully quiet drama following an aging woman desperate to see her Texas hometown one last time. Page took home the Best Actress Oscar for that one. De Mornay played Thelma, a young traveler sharing a bus ride. It was a supporting part, sure, but it brought her serious artistic respect in town. The second picture was Runaway Train, directed by Russian filmmaker Andrei Konchalovsky, and pulled right from an original script by Akira Kurosawa. De Mornay played Sarah, a terrified rail worker trapped on an unmanned train speeding through the frozen Alaskan wilderness, acting alongside heavyweights Jon Voight and Eric Roberts. The picture secured Oscar nods for Voight, Roberts, and editor Henry Richardson. Plus, Voight took home the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama. De Mornay landed her own Golden Globe nod for Best Actress in a Drama, easily the highest solo praise of her screen career up to that moment. For us industry insiders, that nomination proved she offered so much more than just her risky business persona. At 26, holding a coveted Golden Globe nod, acting beside an Oscar winner, she was also navigating a massive public romance with Tom Cruise, right as he became America's most bankable young leading man. When Top Gun dropped in May 1986, it turned Cruise into a pop culture force that very few stars ever achieve. It pulled in over $356 million globally, locking his name to the American blockbuster model for the next 40 years. You and I really need to look at the sharp contrast in their career paths after Risky Business. Cruise had a clear route into action and spectacle. De Mornay's complex talent was simply harder to package. She just refused to fit neatly into the standard character tropes that Hollywood casting directors relied on. The pair split up in 1985. As industry veterans know, Hollywood hates taking risks. Executives prefer banking on a sure thing, a formula they know absolutely works. Studios say, great, let us cast her because we know she excels at this specific type. Which brings us to the late 1980s, the hunt for the perfect script. The back half of the 1980s kept De Mornay incredibly busy on screen, yet none of those projects delivered the massive follow-up performance her early momentum strongly promised us. By December 16, 1986, she married producer Bruce Wagner. The union ultimately lasted until 1990. By 1988, she played opposite Frank Langella in Roger Vadim's cinematic remake of And God Created Woman, the very property that ignited Brigitte Bardot's global fame back in 1956. Sadly, this remake bombed with both critics and audiences. It tried harnessing that unique European provocative energy, but industry tracking showed it completely failed to connect with American theatergoers in 1988. That same year, she pivoted to theater, taking on Billy Dawn in Born Yesterday out at the Pasadena Playhouse. It was Judy Holliday's iconic 1950 film role. De Mornay proved her profound theatrical depth, something her cinematic choices often hid from casting agents. She openly stated she avoided watching Holliday's legendary take before rehearsals. She wanted to build the character's psychology entirely through her own professional lens. She also shot a music video for Starship's track Sarah, which previously topped the Billboard Hot 100 in March 1986. It was a smaller cultural milestone, but it proved to marketers that her face held serious pop culture currency outside traditional cinema. 1990 brought her to HBO's Cold War feature, By the Dawn's Early Light, playing an Air Force captain caught in a nuclear standoff. Sharing the screen with heavyweights like Powers Booth and James Earl Jones, it won solid reviews and clearly proved the dramatic range she wanted to establish. You and I know how the business worked back then. Television offered deeper roles, but before the prestige cable boom, TV carried a massive Hollywood stigma that severely limited an actor's bankability. Then came Backdraft, positioning her for a true peak. Ron Howard's 1991 firefighting blockbuster put de Mornay right back into the massive studio machinery she lacked since Risky Business. It featured Kurt Russell and William Baldwin as battling Chicago firefighters, featuring de Mornay supporting as Helen McCaffrey, Russell's on-screen wife. Backdraft became a major financial hit, pulling in over $152 million against a $35 million budget. She absolutely wasn't the top billing. That went to Russell and Baldwin. Still, she was firmly planted inside a premium Hollywood tentpole again, working with A-list talent in a feature playing wide across the country. As strategists say, it put her in the exact perfect spot for her next move. Also in 1991, she booked ABC's television movie An Inconvenient Woman, adapted from Dominic Dunn's novel, holding her own next to Jason Robards. That project handed her one of the most psychologically punishing roles she ever tackled for the small screen network format, and she totally nailed it. Her career strategy was sharpening. She took on heavy dramatic work across multiple formats, quietly building immense industry credibility while waiting for the ultimate script. Come with me as we unpack The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. It defined her legacy, but looking back, it became an industry turning point she could never quite escape. That movie hit theaters on January 10th, 1992. Curtis Hanson sat in the director's chair, Amanda Silver wrote it, and Hollywood Pictures financed the entire production. She stars as Peyton Flanders, a grieving wife whose doctor husband takes his own life following misconduct allegations. After losing her unborn baby, she becomes blinded by pure rage, embedding herself as a nanny for a family who reported her husband. She infiltrates their world, systematically destroying their lives. De Mornay admitted the screenplay absolutely haunted her after reading. She aggressively campaigned for the part. Studio producers originally liked her because they needed an actress the audience inherently trusted and found charming, a performer whose dark pivot into menace felt genuinely shocking rather than completely telegraphed. Their casting strategy worked flawlessly. Her performance was incredibly precise, deeply unsettling, and totally calculated. The thriller pulled $7.7 million right out the gate, instantly knocking Spielberg's Hook straight off the #1 box office perch, ending that family feature's dominant 4-week theatrical reign. The picture dominated the #1 slot for another month. Before leaving theaters, it raked in $88 million domestically, alongside $52 million overseas, grossing roughly $140 million globally on a tiny $11.9 million budget. It became a massive 1992 profit driver. Then the awards rolled in. De Mornay secured Best Actress honors over in France at the prestigious Cognac Thriller Festival. She also scored MTV nods for Best Villain and Best Female Performance. Plus, she grabbed a Saturn Award nomination for Best Actress from the Sci-Fi and Horror Academy. You and I are going to unpack this career together. The critical consensus agreed her performance is exactly why that movie worked. They shot it on location in Washington State, hitting Seattle, Issaquah, and Tacoma. It also showcased an early breakout supporting role for Julianne Moore, playing the handyman's disabled friend, a character who ultimately exposes Peyton's dark deception. At 32, she hit the absolute peak of Hollywood visibility, a bona fide box office draw. The entire world knew her name. I don't think anyone is really going to know who I am from that film. I mean, I think they will know who Lana is. But looking at the metrics, that momentum stalled. Following her massive thriller peak, we did not see a sudden box office crash. It was a slow fade. She picked a series of screenplays that simply failed to capitalize on her massive industry cachet. By 1992, she started a long, highly publicized romance with legendary singer and poet Leonard Cohen. She even co-produced his 1992 album, The Future. He dedicated the record right back to her. As analysts, we see how this connected her to a brilliant 20th century visionary. Following his death in 2016, she expressed profound grief. She called the brilliant songwriter one of the most vital figures she had ever known. That engagement was pretty brief. The romance ended, but from a biographical standpoint, their deep connection outlasted any formal Hollywood arrangement. Checking her filmography, her 93 and 94 projects were a mixed bag. She played a defense attorney alongside Don Johnson in Sidney Lumet's Guilty as Sin, a feature that drew harsh critical reviews despite Lumet's elite directing credentials. Then came 93's The Three Musketeers, a Disney action spectacle stacked with young talent like Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, and Chris O'Donnell. She stepped in as the villainous Lady de Winter, a solid casting choice, sure, but the studio targeted a younger demographic. It really missed the mark with top film critics. In 94, she delivered what we in the industry still consider an absolute masterclass performance, starring as Arlie in the made-for-TV movie Getting Out, adapting Marsha Norman's play. This role was emotionally draining and deeply serious, but broadcast ratings show it reached way fewer viewers than her major theatrical releases. By 95, she co-starred with Antonio Banderas in Never Talk to Strangers. She even took the reins as executive producer, her very first time holding that executive title. The picture was a commercial failure. Still, stepping up as a producer on subsequent projects proved she was actively trying to steer her own Hollywood narrative from behind the lens, not just starring in front of it. Yet these newer films lacked the cultural impact of her earlier smash hits, A Daughter, a career pivot, and broadcast television. By the mid-90s, de Mornay embraced a brand new role that completely shifted her daily priorities, far away from reading Hollywood scripts and making casting choices. She started dating Patrick O'Neill, a prominent sportscaster and son of acting legend Ryan O'Neill. They welcomed daughter Sophia on November 16, 1997. Their second girl, Veronica, arrived on March 31st, 2001. Here's where the industry gets tough. Let's analyze this pivot together. She stepped back to raise her kids, and Hollywood quickly rotated new leading ladies into her former spot. Broadcast television ultimately became her creative focus throughout the late 90s. In 97, she booked Wendy Torrance in ABC's big miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining. As specialists, we often rank her performance above Shelley Duvall's iconic take in the Kubrick classic, even if the network miniseries itself could not match Kubrick's cinematic genius. By 99, she secured a strong guest arc on ER. Critics praised her turn as a hospital patient, sparking a deep romance with Dr. John Carter. That same season, she led the CBS Hallmark feature Night Ride Home alongside Ellen Burstyn. These were objectively solid acting showcases in highly respectable network packages, but classic Hollywood judged a leading woman's value by her giant theatrical box office grosses. At that time, acting on television was still largely considered a demotion. The 2000s. Supporting billing in smaller screens. This decade marked a grueling grind for de Mornay. She fought to remain relevant in a studio system that simply stopped offering her the massive marquee roles of her youth. In 2003, she landed a part in Identity, Columbia Pictures' clever, critically praised thriller headlined by John Cusack. Portraying a spoiled diva actress proved she was totally willing to satirize her own Hollywood reputation. That self-awareness helped the indie thriller turn a decent profit. She booked a 2004 guest run on The Practice, an absolute powerhouse legal drama on primetime television. Then, a quick 2005 cameo in Wedding Crashers and that blockbuster Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn comedy. Tens of millions of ticket buyers watched it, but the studio edit barely gave her 60 seconds on screen. Also that year, she joined Lords of Dogtown, Catherine Hardwicke's gritty indie drama exploring the legendary Z-Boys skate crew down in Venice Beach, playing the mother of Emile Hirsch's troubled skater, Jay Adams. Critics loved the picture, and it handed de Mornay a raw, naturalistic character study that utilized her veteran chops perfectly. By 2007, she headlined John from Cincinnati. David Milch, the genius behind Deadwood, created this bizarre, wildly ambitious HBO drama. Unfortunately, network executives killed it after just one season. She kept booking steady work as the decade closed out. But those massive A-list vehicles that launched her back in the 80s and early 90s had completely dried up. I am very blessed. I am very happy. A late career revival in her modern trajectory. The late 2000s sparked an unexpected resurgence, not in massive studio blockbusters, but entirely on television. The streaming boom finally offered de Mornay deep, psychologically complex characters that showcased her seasoned acting skills. In 2012, she snagged a part in American Reunion. That fourth American Pie movie gave her a role intentionally winking right at her legacy as a 90s sex symbol. Let's evaluate this together. The role worked because she was finally willing to embrace how pop culture audiences actually remembered her. From 2015 to 2019, she absolutely crushed 13 episodes of Netflix's Jessica Jones. She played Dorothy Walker, the viciously controlling, emotionally toxic mother of Trish Walker. For those of us analyzing Hollywood, she played that character with a cold precision that instantly echoed her terrifying work in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. To critics like us, it was her most sustained television performance, introducing her to a brand new generation of viewers too young to have seen risky business in theaters. She never stopped working. In 2024 alone, we tracked her appearances in St. Clair with Bella Thorne and Peter 5'8" alongside Kevin Spacey, plus several other projects. By 2025, she stunned us in the NCIS Season 22 finale as mob boss Carla Marino, proving exactly the kind of authority she commands playing morally complex female characters. Also, in 2025, the industry buzzed when she reacted publicly to news that The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was being remade with Mika Monroe as Peyton Flanders. De Mornay was incredibly candid. She revealed she learned about it through the press. No one from production had bothered calling her, which she admitted felt like a genuine betrayal of her legacy. She admitted to being quite perturbed. Still, she added she was highly curious to see if anyone could actually live up to the standard she and the original cast created. But Rebecca De Mornay never actually stopped working. Over more than 40 years in this harsh business, we've logged her in over 60 film and television productions. That is a massive body of work most actors would easily consider a deeply successful career. Let's look at this together. Why didn't she become one of the truly massive A-list stars of her generation? The honest answer involves the painfully limited roles Hollywood offered women throughout the 1980s and 90s, alongside the deliberate choices she made with her own time and the particular cruelty of our studio system, which brutally typecast her even as she desperately worked to transcend the exact image it had built for her. We trace two defining moments. Risky Business made her a star. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle made her famous. But the industry found two tight boxes to trap her in, and casting directors simply struggled imagining her anywhere else. Actresses who actually thrived across multiple decades in Hollywood back then, like Meryl Streep, Susan Sarandon, and Jodie Foster, survived by finding projects or creative collaborators who could actually showcase the full dynamic range they were capable of delivering. De Mornay absolutely had range, and she proved it constantly. The tragedy is those proofs rarely landed in the mainstream films audiences were discussing the following Monday morning. There is no single scandal here, no defining public failure, no dramatic moment of personal self-destruction. The career plateau of Rebecca De Mornay is much quieter than that, and for us industry analysts, far more fascinating. It is the story of a genuinely talented actress navigating a machine that exploited her at its convenience, then coldly moved on when a newer face arrived. So what do you and I take from this? Leave a comment and let me know which Rebecca De Mornay film you remember the most. I would love to read your thoughts. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We're here every week decoding the stories behind the careers, films, and hidden moments that built Hollywood. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.